Starring
ML Elric. ML Elric.
speaking. Detectives come in three sizes: city cops, big agencies, and guys like me with a small office and an insurance company retainer to pay the rent. Cops don't have to worry about getting cases, and the big agencies have branches from here to Shanghai. But from where I sit, you never can tell where your next case will come from.
You asked interrogator question out of my face. It's gone.
What are you doing?
That is not paid for by them. That is paid for by the people of Detroit.
You might be qualified, ML.
I'm not qualified for this job.
Let me tell you something. You want to go right now? Okay? You want to go right now, Al?
I have to start with a disclaimer. Once again, another fantastic production job by Mr. Mark Fellhauer.
That's an easy one. That's an easy one this week.
But sometimes it's the original, it's the source material that can cause some confusion. So I want you to go back on your own time, everybody. Use the slider if you're doing the audio, or you can use the same thing if you're watching us on YouTube channel ML Elric. When you hear that part that said, I'm ML Elric and I have a small, it says office. Small office. I want to make sure
Not
that
orifice.
you've heard that clearly. I just don't want there to be any confusion because there's a lot of myths out there.
There was an intro?
There was an intro. It was.
God, I must have.
Did you fall asleep
spaced out.
already?
No, not fall asleep. Just I zoned out. Sorry.
You have an attention span problem
That's Sean Windsor, of course.
I didn't used to.
until you started doing this show.
Yeah, he
Get
couldn't.
to a certain age.
He couldn't hear it over the stream of consciousness or the stream flowing through his constricted urethra.
That wouldn't make it much of a stream.
No, it wouldn't. It wouldn't. But so we go from dribble to drabble here on ML Soul of Detroit.
More of a trickle.
And we're brought to you by some folks who support the entire Red Shovel Network. They're kind enough to throw a few shekels our ways. That is Hall Financial and Luke Nowacki. Hall Financial, believe it or not, has seen interest rates go down at the same time the Fed is increasing them. So, Mark, is this a good time? I mean, this is probably a rhetorical question, but is this a good time to call Hall?
It's always a good time to call Hall.
Damn it!
First at 866-CALL-HALL or go online, callhallfirst.com. And I believe right now they're still doing the free appraisals, saving you up to $750. If you're going to go look for a new home and buy a new home, get your finances straight first, call Hall First. They have nearly 5,000 five-star reviews, and they're going to make the entire process very easy and simple. I mean, you've used them.
I've used them twice, and if the housing market ever changed, I'd look to use them a third time.
Oh, really?
Just need to get those prices down.
Become a slumlord?
No. I'm thinking of being, I think what they call it is a real estate impresario in a college town.
Oh, okay.
No,
or a tycoon?
Some people call that a slumlord, but our homes are of impeccable quality.
Call hallfirst.com. You know, it's funny. I still remember my first landlord in Ann Arbor when I moved out of the dorms. Young Ho Hung was his name. And the guy ruled. He'd come over on a Saturday to fix something at like 7 a.m. with a bunch of hungover college students. And he'd bring like 9 large pizzas.
Wow.
And only 6 of us lived there. Like, okay, cool. Yeah.
And is he still young or is he now old?
I don't know if he still owns that house or not. That was a great, oh my God, that was a great house.
Did he favor tight jeans like you do?
What?
The
I wear tight.
The Euro look?
What?
That's nice.
What are you talking about? I don't even have jeans on
You're
today.
showing
Liar.
or
You're
pants, khakis, blue pack khakis, whatever it is.
You're fake news.
You know what I mean?
Are they that tight?
How many coins does he have in his pocket? That's the test.
Maybe it was just the way you were sitting. I just thought you're leaning into yourself. You're owning it. I like it. He's stepping out.
Hey, I am what I am, man.
Mark Fellhauer has a large office.
Okay.
That's right. We had a roommate. A house owner. I guess what do we call it? Landlord in the first house I lived on, and he was great. And then he sold the house to a guy who was kind of the notorious big house owning guy. He was sort of a regular dude who owned a bunch of houses, and he was buying up more. And we begged this guy, don't sell. He said, oh, no, I got to sell. And according to local lore, the guy who owned all these houses, who ended up owning the house we moved into the next year too, he just lost like half the houses because he was collecting rent from some of the lovely co-eds in some of the houses, and apparently his wife found out, and his empire fell apart. That's
Really?
that's what we were told. We don't know.
Isn't that illegal?
Well,
You're alluding to some sort of prostitution, right? Wouldn't that be considered illegal?
I think barter. Barter is more like it, but and maybe it was just one co-ed, but the word on the street was his empire was riven by scandal. But
Now, every
we knew
house-
we had an unresponsive landlord because one morning we woke up and somebody was pounding the hell out of the house. We thought it was coming down. We didn't know what it was,
Yeah.
and he said, "We're putting a new roof on." I'm like, "Well, can they start like later in the day or after we move out?" He's like, "Nope." And we're like, "Is that in the lease?" It's like, "Oh, we're doing it." I said, "Okay, all right."
I had 3 places I lived in Ann Arbor. They were all dumps, and I loved living there. I don't know why. There's something about living in a dump when you're that age that I don't know, creates character. Maybe no.
I don't know about character.
Living with other people, I think, really helps because you really learn about human frailties and what you'll put up with and what you shouldn't have to put up with very quickly. When you're in a house that's licensed for 3 that has 6 guys, including somebody who sleeps in a closet with it's actually impossible for them to sleep horizontally because there's just not enough square footage.
I was a terrible roommate.
Why?
I was a sad, lost little puppy, you know.
Well,
So
this
much
is
has changed.
This is an avenue I'd love to go down.
No. Just, you know, yeah. I was at Austin, University of Texas, and yeah, it was not good.
Would you lash out at your roommates, or you
No,
just,
I didn't lash out at them.
recluse?
I would lash out at just the world in a way, maybe.
Really? Wow.
That's back when he was known as Sean Whitman.
Abusing substances and
Look it up, folks.
It's college.
throwing glass coffee tables up against the cement wall and stuff like that.
Climbing the
Cool.
clock tower and
Yeah, I had a roommate rightfully.
scoping out those babes.
I had a roommate rightfully move out the next day after that
Scoping it.
that coffee table. By the way,
That might have been your best joke.
For those who
Other than like a mass murder joke.
you wouldn't want to come in and see a carpet full of covered in shattered glass, would you? You would be like,
But if I knew you.
how was it? Was it like when
I mean,
Tommy
we just-
Boy fell on the coffee table just after graduation and shattered it down?
no. I had a guy, a friend over, I guess, who was, you know, high on something and threw a beer bottle. The apartment had it was made out of cinder blocks, so it was a hard wall, and he threw a beer bottle at 2 a.m. Nobody else was home at the time except the 2 of us, and shattered the glass all over. And he said, "Oh, that was cool." So it kept doing another and another and another. And
Yeah, stupid.
I jumped in, and all of a sudden we had no more beer bottles. And he's like, "What about that glass coffee table?" That's how that happened. So the roommates who
college.
worked all night shifts come home at 7 a.m. and there's nowhere to walk.
That's a waste of Lone Star.
And
And they left over that? Jeez.
yeah, well, of course they would. I would have too. I mean, how stupid and
I say they showed concern for your mental state.
silly and ridiculous.
Cleaned it up and helped you out, and so they just bailed. What kind of lesson is that?
No, that wasn't their responsibility. But anyway, you never know who you're going to run into. You know, a dope like me, right? So learning to navigate that is,
It's good to see that you've lightened up a lot over the years.
well, yeah. I don't bring any glass.
Okay, well, that's good. That's good. The last house I think I lived in had a carpeted kitchen and a carpeted bathroom.
Yeah, we did too. A carpeted bathroom was the worst.
Who
in
carpets
college
a
house.
bathroom?
I don't know. It was the worst. We had one too.
And then rents to guys. I'm like,
Awful. I had female roommates. I had multiple female roommates along with guys in this one house.
It's
It was
that big office.
bananas. No, it's yeah. It was just fun times.
Damn. Okay.
Well, it taught me that females can be way messier than guys because they have more stuff.
They also
No?
tend to call the landlord a lot more often. I'll just tell you that based on my limited experience. There's a lot of hair in the drain. Like,
Oh,
well,
that's true. Yeah.
There wasn't before you guys moved in, so why are you calling me?
I don't think we ever called the landlord for anything.
No, we
Just
called Don.
adapted and lived.
Don was the first landlord on the Milford house. We called Don and told him, please don't sell. The Milford house reminds me of a story. My buddy Dave Stearns was walking home from Pinball Pete's or something one time, and a bunch
Is this
of
another story about your penis?
no. Pinball.
Oh, okay.
Pinball Pete's.
So he's walking home, and all of a sudden, this group of big guys surround him, and they're all wearing varsity jackets with H on them. So we think they're like from Holt High School or Williamston or one of these nearby schools. And they surround him, and they're walking with him the whole way back to the house. and he's getting close to the house, but they don't know that because they don't know where he lives, and he's playing
Look at
really
the size
cool.
of these guys.
And he says to him, he's like, "Hey guys, how's it going?" You know, he tries to make up a conversation with them, and they said to him, "Don't make us try to like you because we'll feel bad after we beat you." And so he gets right to the house and he throws like a 90-degree turn, so it's not obvious where he's going. He just hits right in the back door, and luckily it was unlocked, and so he got in there and locked the door, and then, being a jackass that he was himself, he's like flipping them off through the windows without checking whether the front door is locked. But he got away with it. But lots of.
Did you always keep your doors unlocked or locked, or generally unlocked?
I mean, I always lock a door when I leave it. But when you live with 5 or 6 guys, there's no telling who's going to do what. And of course, somebody always loses their key, so that's always a problem. And that's when windows get busted or.
I remember coming back to the main house that I lived at. I had like an early doctor's appointment. I'm coming back at say 8:30 in the morning, and there's some guy walking out of the front door. I'm like, I don't recognize that guy. Who's that guy? And he had a giant plastic bag with him. I'm like, oh, that's really weird. Who is that? What is he doing? Whose
Why
friend
is all
is
our
this?
shit in this plastic bag?
Yeah, and so he saw me and dropped one of the bags, took another bag, and left. And I'm like, okay, what just happened here? Like, I'm still kind of, I don't know, it's 8:30 in the morning. I'm not thinking we're getting robbed at 8:30 in the morning, but sure enough, guy just, door was unlocked, came in, took VCRs, TVs, stuff like that, put them in these bags, and only took one of them. Now, the fun part is I got to call the police, and the police came over, and I picked him out of a lineup. Thank you.
Oh, wow.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah, I was very proud of myself.
You should be.
African-American
Citizen.
gentleman, too, and I picked him out of a lineup.
Damn. So
I don't know why I was so proud about that, but
I'm not sure. So you
it was exciting, man. It was like I felt like I was in my own CSI episode because they were dusting too. I'm like, why are you? Now I'm like, why are you dusting in this house for this crap?
But what's the relevance of African American gentlemen?
Well, there is a stereotype that white people think all black people look the same.
Oh, so
And I was able to pick him out of a lineup of 6 African American men.
So you were discriminating, not discriminating.
I was not. No, I knew. I
mean,
knew what he
you
looked
had
like.
discriminating.
It's a
eyes.
stereotype. I don't have that.
So the white guilt. The white
I have
guilt
no white
bill.
guilt.
The
I
white
nailed
guilt
it.
bill in Florida is for people like you, is what you're saying.
What is the white? I
I thought there was a gay bill in Florida. Not a
There's
white
that
guilt.
too. There's
Oh.
separate bills.
Wait,
Why
what
does
is
everybody want to go to Florida? It sounds very complicated.
what is the white guilt bill, and what is it really called?
I don't remember the name of it exactly, but the idea is that
the critical race
workplaces
theory?
and school, it's sort of tied up with that, but it's workplaces and schools can't require any kind of training or teach anything that would make you feel guilty, basically, for what your ancestors have done.
Yeah, Trump tried to impose some of that when they were doing sensitivity training on federal employees just before he left
Right.
office.
So
Is
you're
that
not allowed to
like
feel
a
guilty?
local version of that?
Yeah.
Is that DeSantis trying to out-Trump Trump again?
It's DeSantis, and I don't know that he's signed it yet, but it's it's come up to the House, the State House. So
I would like to see DeSantis and Trump go toe-to-toe. I think DeSantis is a pretty formidable guy.
Oh, yeah.
And I
Well,
wonder who comes out of that battle.
you can talk about the Mayflower, you just can't talk about who was on the bottom, in the bottom of the Mayflower, right?
I don't think the Mayflower was a
Mayflower didn't have
slave ship.
slaves.
No, I know. That's a metaphor.
Well, I'll tell you who's on the bottom. The Irish were on the bottom of it.
Yeah, that's
Irish
not literal.
Puritans.
Exactly. Yeah.
Was
But
speaking of Irish.
Oh, wow. Perfect segue.
Yes, you knew we'd bring it home eventually. The Caju Cafe is the place to be this Thursday, which is March 17th, where we're doing a special broadcast of ML Soul of Detroit live from the Caju St. Patty's at the Caddies from noon to 2. The party starts at 11. We'll broadcast from noon to 2, and after we're done, we're going to have Irish music all day, all evening, and probably into the morning. The Irish balladeer Michael O'Brien, Odd Enough Celtic Music Band, and at 8 o'clock, the Corktown Popes take the stage. So check out the Caju Cafe. Find out what's going on every night at the Caju Cafe, because there's always something going on there. It's the pride of the East Side. You can find out more at cajucafe.com. And for those of our listeners who are not francophones, that's CADIEUXCAFE.com. We will have a link to that on our website, which is mlsoulofdetroit.com. So
Francophobes.
So check that out. That's right. People who
Isn't it a Belgian place?
it is, but there's Belgium's funny. There's part of it that's Flemish, part of it speaks German, part of it that speaks Italian, I think, and part of it that speaks French. But Caju is a French. It's a French
I know.
surname because Cadieux Road was one of the ribbon farms that the French settlers had, so it went from the river all the way up Cadieux.
It's going to be a long day. Man, St. Patrick's going to be a long day.
Yeah, I think it's going to be. A good place for me to be because I can walk home from there. That's a crucial element of my
Good,
plan
yeah.
to survive St. Patrick's Day is to walk home from wherever I end the day. And we also need to acknowledge another sponsor, a guy who makes this show possible, Mr. Luke Nowacki, who is the guy you want to turn to when you're looking at your 401k statement and saying, what hath
happened?
God wrought?
Yeah, this year has just been atrocious. It's funny, too, because nobody can figure out the market. The old adage is you don't.
Not even you?
No, you don't time. Well, honestly, like today, I thought today, is this going to be another bad day because there's coronavirus numbers are increasing in China and, Russia just drags on. There's just a lot of uncertainty and the Fed's supposed to meet about raising. So I was like, oh, okay, yeah, it's going to go down. And then I remember, no, wait, the market's always 3 days ahead of the news. They know this stuff before it even gets to the news. And now it's up big today.
Because of Opus Dei.
But, yeah, another conspiracy.
They control the stock market.
The point is you need to have rational financial advice and don't freak out. And that's what Luke at Pinnacle Wealth provides, 248-663-4748. He'll know where the market's going, what it's thinking to the best of his ability, stocks, bonds, 401ks, 529s, all those things. Where do you put your money? How do you allocate it? Get advice, get a strategy. Luke Nowacki, Pinnacle Wealth, 248-663-4748.
And if you're not a Mason, if you're not a member of the Trilateral Commission, if you're not with Opus Dei, he will still make it all about you, sweetheart.
Securities and investment advisory services offered through Royal Alliance Associates, Inc., member FINRA SIPC. Royal Alliance Associates, Inc. is separately owned, and other entities and/or marketing names, products, or services referenced here are independent of Royal Alliance Associates, Inc.
And we'll have a link to Luke's website on our website. Whenever you contact one of our sponsors, please let them know that ML sent you. And at the Cadieux Cafe, it's possible. I don't want to promise anything, but it's possible there may be a Joe Zuver sighting at the Cadieux Cafe.
Wow.
So,
That would be-
and we're expecting Matt Jennings to be back with his own brand of humor. That's why we'll be drinking.
I went to a concert with Jennings a couple of weeks ago.
I saw that. Was it Tool or Spoon or Pitchfork?
Tool.
Tool, okay.
Do you even know the band Tool? This is what I find fascinating. Do you
Yeah,
or
I
do you
know a
just-
lot of Tools. I don't know if they formed a band or not.
you just poo-poo it because it's
Because they're called Tool.
No, I like metal.
Okay.
I'm all for that. Yeah.
okay. Well, if you like metal, I think you would like Tool.
Oh yeah, I'm sure I would.
All right.
How was the concert?
It's great. It was. I mean, it's kind of I think it is my first big concert post-COVID. So I just love seeing live shows. But man,
And you had fun with Maddie?
it cracks me up, man. He pulls his camera out to take a picture of the stage before it even starts. And I've never seen security all over someone as quick as they were because no photos. They're not messing around. They'll kick you out. Blah, blah. And there's a sign directly in front of Matt that says no photos. Like, yeah, you probably should read that sign right there in front of you.
Why don't they want any photos?
That's just been their thing. They want you to enjoy the show. They don't want you filming it or taking
okay.
photos the whole show. And then the last song, they always allow you, okay, bring out your cameras for this last song. And we know you're addicted to them, is what Maynard said. And naturally, everyone's just like,
It is a drag to be at a concert and not be able to
hate
see the stage because everybody in front of you is holding up their phone.
It has always been my biggest pet peeve are phones at concerts. I don't know why. I don't know.
Do people watch those later?
Well,
by the way?
that's part of the reason
Good
is
question.
because you're watching it through your phone while you're there. And secondly, any video anyone's showed me from a concert, it always sucks. I don't want to see it.
Yeah, I think the only time I actually looked for concert video was my daughter Emily got to perform with Roger Waters, and
Oh yeah, I remember that.
I tried to record it and I screwed it up. So I was hoping some joker
That's totally
put
different.
it up there.
That's very, very different.
Well, that would be the 1% exception, right? Because how many times does your kid get to perform on stage with some huge star? In which case, yeah, you want to see as much of that as you can. But
I don't know. I digress.
okay, so we convened today to talk a little bit about March Madness, which I know the first round will be over before some of you hear this show. But I have to share something that popped up on my Twitter feed which just cracked me up. And I'd love to hear Mr. Windsor's responses. Chris Solari, who's the beat writer for the Detroit Free Press, tweeted, Tom Izzo gives Sean Windsor credit for being a reporter who still wants to be an AAU coach. What prompted Tom Izzo to troll you at a press conference?
He did.
Well, what's the backstory?
Well, can you tell us what happened?
Before I start throwing beer bottles and shattering coffee tables.
Because you're tight with Izzo. I'm
not tight
you have
with
a good,
Izzo.
You have a very good relationship.
They have a healthy respect for each other.
I don't
and a
know
good
about
rapport.
that.
Okay, you guys hate each other. I don't know.
Yeah, Izzo wants you to die in your own blood. But what made him say this?
Oh, what
Preferably
game
at
was
his
it?
hands.
It was after Michigan State beat Wisconsin.
Was this a long question where you said something like, Tom, I know you had your wings utilized and then you ran the 4-2 and then you had your double dribble post up and then the guy had backdoor action and I know you were looking to hit Joe Bag of Donuts on the bench. It didn't work out. So can you talk about that?
Well, I don't usually use the phrase "talk about that." That's kind of a no-no, although some folks do. And I'm not judging. It's fine.
It's weak. I hate it when people ask.
It does. It often. Sometimes we'll get good answers, though, right?
It goes nowhere.
Sometimes it does. So I
Rarely.
understand why.
Set the scene for us.
I understand why people do that. Michigan
You have a
State.
cough button over there, by the way.
I'm hitting the wrong one then. I'm hitting this one.
That's
I like hearing his cough. Any noise he makes is nice. That's how it goes.
Try it. See if it works.
Yeah, just don't grab anything and ask me to cough.
Press it and cough.
I wouldn't grab anything.
See if it works.
Because I have a huge office.
See if it works.
Need something to drink?
Hey, it works. Okay, cool.
Perfect.
Now you
That
can talk
work?
without him being
Fantastic.
coughing all over.
No, it's
I don't
all
know who
good.
I just muted over there, but I apologize.
So what happened with Izzo?
Yeah, Izzo.
You're building
Give it up.
suspense by saying nothing.
Michigan State beat Wisconsin in the quarters or whatever it was. The Big Ten tournament was in Indianapolis. And
Glorious victory.
on Friday night, and their 5-star freshman Max Christie had his best game in a month, and he struggled this year. For those of y'all out there that don't really care about Michigan State or follow, but they had this highly touted freshman who's had a really up and down year, and he had arguably his best game of the season, or at least his best game in a long time. And he made some shots. And for those of you that don't know anything about basketball or care one way or the other, let me say real quickly, normally when you take a jump shot, you follow through with your wrist and it puts the rotation on the ball.
Put the cookies in a cookie jar, right?
And occasionally there are good shooters out there that shoot a knuckleball, right? Tim Hardaway comes to mind. He used to shoot a knuckleball in the 90s. He's a guy that really busted out the crossover move. Anyway, sorry about all that. So Christie's first shot's a knuckleball, goes in. And then there's several shots after that, there's rotation. And when you see a player shooting like that, they're starting to feel comfortable and confident. So I ask about that, and was that part of the plan, because they'd had a lot of talks, and Christie waited a while to shoot. So yeah, it was a somewhat involved question about his confidence level and all of that. And I mentioned the rotation of the ball. So he starts to give me a good answer, and then he stops himself and says, "Okay, everybody, this is Sean Windsor, a sports writer who still wants to be an AAU coach." And just in front of everybody, he stops himself mid-answer.
How demeaning of him.
Well, no, because we talk on the phone sometimes, and I will tell him,
I know.
What about this or this or this?
And
or
then he
this?
says,
You don't know basketball. They just
No,
got
he'll actually say what he says to anybody that does know a little bit
You don't
about
know
it.
basketball. They just got caught.
He'll say, "Hey, that's not bad for a writer or whatever." But he says that to other people too, that make an observation. But he treats us like he doesn't treat me that way. But a lot of coaches, football coaches, the worst, and assuming you don't know shit.
yeah.
Right.
I'm a man. I'm 40.
It's such a complex game.
Yeah, and they've got the codes to the fucking nuclear arsenal or whatever. Excuse the language.
We can talk about
I do
nukes.
find it funny, though, when there are, gas bags on radio or writers that think
Like
they
us.
know all of, they know every single thing that has happened, right? Like, that drives
a
me
lot.
up.
But
That's far more common.
But there's a market for that out there now. A lot of
That's all
folks.
bullshit.
A lot of folks make livings by putting up blogs, and they go watch film after the game
Oh, that's
and break
different.
down every play.
That's totally
There's
different.
a blog that MGO blog.
Yeah.
That has a huge
SpartanMag.com does
following.
that too. They'll go play by play after a game.
Yeah, and people eat that up. And
Shot
newspaper
to A gap and he missed his B block,
Exactly.
and I'm just like, what are you writing about? Are you telling me how to
Love
build a
it.
model plane?
We had our last beat writer at Michigan before our current, Michael Cohen, Nick Baumgartner, came to us with the idea that he was going to provide some of that, and he did. And newspapers are kind of in a tricky spot because that's a lot of time to do that
Sure.
sort of thing.
Sure.
and it goes against what the traditional beat writing, daily notebooks, and all that sort of thing. So, in any case,
That's why they should just pick up these blogs and have them do it.
There's a burgeoning market for that, and I mean, fans.
There's a lot of people that geek out on X's
Absolutely,
and O's. I'm
eat
talking
it up.
about the people that I just loathe sports radio, probably because we did it for so long.
But I wasn't worried about that
manufactured, and
I wasn't talking about the X's and O's with this. I'm always more interested in
the people.
And can you get out of your own way? And it's not just sports; it's with anything, right? Like when I write, sometimes I'm like, oh my god, I just loosen up and quit. Right? It's a struggle, and it's that way with anything. So that's why I like writing about sports in that way. Can you get out of your own damn way?
Have you ever asked this question?
And be who you are,
have you ever asked
or
this
what
question
you're capable of?
Can you ask this question at a press conference?
How can they call traveling on a home team?
Yeah, that's a good question.
But one of the things that drives me crazy,
I am sick of the traveling, by the way.
You'll hear it sometimes at the end of a press conference where they're still running it just before the guy says, "Okay, we have 2 more questions for the coach before he has to get back to the locker room. We got to get on a plane." And there'll always be some guy. I'm assuming it's a young guy or a young woman who's kind of new to the business, but it's always like, Coach, obviously this was an epic win where your team performed above expectations. A lot of that has to do with the way you prepared them for tonight's game. But could you just talk to us about what a great win this was for this outstanding program and your genius, soon to be inducted into Hall of Fame career? And I'm like, what's he supposed to say to that?
Let me ask you.
I don't worry about any of that kind of stuff.
I covered Michael Jordan's first retirement press conference when I was working for a little paper on the south side of Chicago, and every question from the Chicago media was like, Michael, obviously you redefined the game of basketball. You made it your own. They should probably call it Jordan ball from now on. Jim Naismith has been dead for a long time. You took down the peach baskets in every record known to the NBA, and you're going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer if you're not in there already. I just want to know, can you tell me what it was like to create the Sun? And it's like, question. I've wanted somebody to go up and say, you sucked at baseball.
What were you going to ask, Mark?
They wouldn't let me near the microphone. You don't send a Piston fan to Michael Jordan's retirement press conference.
Or maybe be a journalist and suppress the Pistons fan when you're in the press conference.
I did suppress the Pistons, but I will say that my story on his retirement was less fawning,
effusive
than the others. Yeah.
What's your question?
I was going to ask you, like, how important are press conferences in your mind? Because they drive me up a wall.
We have 2 more questions, Mark, before Sean has to get to the Sean and Carl's podcast.
Well,
I feel like nothing ever really comes
Well,
out
what's
of
COVID? What COVID's changed? I mean, sometimes it does because there are still fans out there that want.
Could you do your job if they didn't have press conferences?
Probably.
Yes.
No.
Yeah, you could.
No, because these days you get a little bit more out of them because the locker rooms are closed, and when the locker rooms are open.
That's what I want to know is, could you produce really insightful journalism that no one else could get if you didn't have access to the locker room and access to the players?
Well, it's definitely changed. You can get access. You can get access in other ways. I remember a couple of years, 2 or 3 years ago, Michigan State made the Final Four run, and it was in Minneapolis. And Michigan State in our business is known. I mean, they open their practices during the regular season. They have open locker rooms, and a lot of colleges don't. Michigan does not. They used to, but when they rebuilt Chrysler, they decided not to. In any case, Xavier Tillman, who played for Michigan State, now plays in the Memphis Grizzlies, who's a really, really good player, played with Cassius Winston, 6'8", 6'9" forward, had I want to say something, maybe a daughter, I can't remember, had a child when he was still at State.
Yeah.
Daughter. And got married, and at 20, 21, whatever it was, 20 maybe, and was just always 20 going on 40. And I found out in the locker room one day that he had this little chart, and it turns out that here's a 20-year-old. He organized his entire life with this color-coded chart about duties and when to feed and when to wake up, and all of this because he was a dad, a student, and a player trying to get to the NBA all at the same time. And it was great. And then I ended up talking to him about it. And so that's the kind of thing. Is that necessary for human culture that we have to have that story? No. But State fans loved reading it because it gave you a little insight into what made this guy so good.
And how he went from nowhere to a guy who was working his ass off into a pro career.
Absolutely.
In America.
And that chart, those charts that he had, how he organized his life, said a lot about why he was who he was.
Well, and think about the locker room going back a ways when it was just an AP sports reporter who saw the Andro on the shelf in Mark McGuire's stall and says like, or creatine, or what is it? You're taking that stuff? It's like, yeah. What's the problem? It's like, wait,
Maybe,
hold on, Popeye.
maybe I'm just really cynical in that these, and I'm thinking mainly of professional sports, how they really can control their own message now.
Yeah, for sure. No, they don't.
And they can keep individuals out or individual.
They can. They don't need us. It's not that we have to be in the locker. It's not what they have to be in the locker room per se. To me, the best thing is that you can develop a relationship with somebody. So if you have some space somewhere, locker rooms are invasive.
And now
like in Europe, they don't do it at all with soccer. They would consider that crazy, and it kind of is when you think about it.
Well, so
can you develop a relationship
to their benefit? Like to Cash's, it was to his benefit, right, to talk to you. But I always just get annoyed.
Oh, you mean when he lost his brother?
Yeah, like that was. That was a good.
Well, they put me in an office. They actually put me in Izzo's office without Izzo.
I'm talking about like post-game press conferences because people always remember Marshawn Lynch, that whole to-do.
Oh, yeah. I'm only here because I have to be.
Did you ever see the Key and Peele hit on him?
No.
Where all he said was biscuits and gravy.
Yeah, I don't know. To me, with professional athletes, how do you make them talk? Now, in the end,
you can't.
The narrative, because of their sports writers or commentators, he lost in that battle because they complained about it so much.
They did, but he didn't have to say anything. Go watch that sketch, by the way. He would get asked, "Oh, Marshawn, what did you think about this run? You had a 50-yard run in the blocking, biscuits and gravy."
Yeah,
over and over.
I don't know how you make somebody talk.
Well, you can't, but you can find people in the locker room. And I only went in there, I think, once, but I think Sean would agree that back in 2005 when the Tigers were just abysmal, about to set a record for worst team ever, guys like Brandon Inge made themselves accessible. They answered every question, and it kind of gave you some insights into his character. And he, as sort of a junior member of the team, became almost a spokesman for the team when there were older guys on that team, Dimitri Young, Shane Halter, other guys who just weren't going to talk.
How do you write honestly, though?
But you wouldn't know to go to Brandon Inge unless you got in there and somebody's like, yeah.
Right, and he had that role for a long time, for as long as he was a Tiger, really. It used to, there are other stories about that. But in any case, that team you're mentioning, I was with for a month. This is how much our business has changed. For 1 month, I went on the road with them.
You're playing shortstop.
And I wrote one story. It was all for one long story. And I'll never forget Carlos Pena, who was, I think he was playing first base.
Yeah.
At the time, he was a talented player, but was really struggling. And he was he wouldn't talk, but I was around long enough that eventually he agreed to talk to me. So we sat in the dugout one afternoon, and he opened up about what was going through his mind, what would go through his mind when he get to the plate. And how he was overthinking. And he spoke several different languages. He spoke Spanish, English, Italian. There was one other one, I think. And he would get pretzeled up and confuse himself. And so he talked about the mental struggle. And that's not that uncommon in that sport. But I remember it was an amazing chat to have him open up. And that ended up becoming part of the story. He, by the way, went off and found himself, I think, in Tampa. Ended up having a couple of really, really good years.
To me, that... it's a little different than what I guess. I get weary because I see things like, I'll give you two examples, and they're both Adam Schefter, right? Adam Schefter works for ESPN, who has a deal with the NFL. And then you see stories come out like with Dalvin Cook. There was an allegation that he beat his girlfriend, and she ended up filing charges against him. And Schefter had this tweet that was very supportive to him that he had backtracked from, and we now know that it was fed from his agent. And Schefter just did it again with Deshaun Watson about how this is why he wanted it to go to court because he knew the truth and blah 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 blah. And it's like, it just seems like they're shills for that league and for the players. And do you really get to any truth? Do you really learn anything about the people? No, I don't. For the majority of them, no.
I think you're
talking about press conferences, or you're talking about which are we talking about?
All of the coziness between reporters and I guess
it's not as cozy as it used to be. It's a lot. There's a lot more animus. There's a lot more animus. We're seen as kind of the enemy in a lot of ways. I mean, reporters used to travel with the team on the team buses, riding to the arena from the hotel on the planes. No, they don't need us at all. Social media's completely changed that. Not only that, they have their own teams, have their own websites with their own reporters.
And they have retired reporters who are now working for them as team reporters.
Well, like the Lions, the NFL has it. I mean, they're just hiring young people right out of college to do that kind of thing.
Beat reporters in general, to me, just aren't as critical of a team anymore as they were 10 years ago, 20 years ago.
I don't know if that's true around here.
I said it seems like it. It feels like.
I mean, I'm trying to think of like just staying with the Lions. Dave Burkett is plenty critical, right?
Dave's okay, yeah.
You know,
yeah.
Oh, he's more than okay. He's
well, I'm
he's
just
as
this is
good
my
at beat writers.
This
there
is
in
my
the country.
opinion. And it's even worse when you get to the announcer aspect of it because.
Well, they're paid by the team, and they're.
I know.
But what are you going to do? I mean, here's the other thing. What do you want? Do you want somebody to look at and write negatively every single time
No,
they write?
absolutely not.
When a team sucks, right, all year long, you can't do that. You just can't. Readers will get tired of it.
Sure.
You got to pick your spots.
Misery loves company, though.
And be critical. You know for sure. And fans want to be. They want that reinforcement. Oh, they pick up the paper and they think they suck too, and it makes you feel good in that moment for sure. But every single time,
So I
people
think
get tired of that.
I think it's hard for beat writers to be critical of the team. I mean, I admire the ones who can be objective, not
Well, it's not their job,
mean-spirited.
right? They're supposed to just report.
Right, but I mean, if the team has a bad game and you report on it, going into that locker room the next day can be pretty intimidating. And I think Izzo called you out in good humor because you guys have a good relationship, and I thought that
He's called me privately to MF me too, right? I mean, he's done that to a lot of people up there.
That's fair enough, but I mean, I respect the beat reporters who can stand their ground. I think our friend Vince, when he was at the Free Press covering the Pistons, he had to call out the Pistons a lot. I know when he went in the locker room, they were too ready to say, "Hey, Ellis, get over here." Why'd you write that? And he had a lot of courage doing it. I think it's really hard to do. When the announcers are homers, it doesn't bother me as much. I mean, on
They
the
work
radio,
for the teams, for one. Sure.
Right, but on TV, if they tell me, wow, the Tigers are primed to make a comeback, I've been watching games, it's like, they're not. I mean, I can objectively say, you're just saying this because you don't want me to change the channel. I know the Tigers they're toast. They don't have it today.
Or to go back to Deshaun Watson again, when he plays, will that ever be mentioned about the civil suits or the criminal investigation when he's playing? No.
It will. No. It will. But the people that write about it at first. But then every single game, they're not going to mention
sure.
that, right?
No, I know. But they'll allude to it. I mean, they went through
Ray
some
Lewis. That
trouble.
happened with Ray Lewis. Remember,
Yeah.
it kind of faded. But
Schechter.
So I didn't know this about Schechter, but if it sounds like that dude, his objectivity should be
gone.
highly endowed.
It's
I mean, he
gone.
sold
Yeah.
himself.
100%.
No, for sure. Okay, that's one. That's
He
one
has
thing.
to.
Let me point this out though.
Well, he doesn't have to. He did.
Well, that's how he gets his scoops. That's how he became what he is.
Yeah, they're not scoops if they're fed to you.
Well, there's some truth to that. Let me. But sticking with you're talking about your idea of being critical. That's one thing. Somebody gets in trouble, that kind of thing. But let me just point this out to both of y'all and do the folks out there are kind enough to spend some time with us. The beat writers and anybody that's around, and I'm going to include the announcers in this too. Anybody that's around, let's just keep it at the professional level, at a professional baseball team, football team, basketball team, hockey team, all the time. You understand how how rare the talent is, right?
Sure.
Even the relatively worst players in any of those leagues is still a 1 in a million talent, right?
Yeah. Darren McCarty scores 50 goals in the AHL and scores 10 in the NHL.
And so you're around that, and so and you see the work, and you see all of what goes into being, right? So then it's relative. So that's your perspective. You see a human being who's that gifted at something. To the fan, though, well, they suck. They made a mistake. They're the 20th player on the 25-man roster, whatever. So it's a different perspective. So what you think, God, they're sucking up, they're really not. They just understand on the large global scale of how rare this work is and this skill level is, and so that's the perspective they put.
But that could be said for a lot of industries. You could say that about a musician or something who's worked their whole life and then they put out a bad album, right? Are you allowed to criticize that?
No, for sure you are. For sure you are.
And sports is weird because it is just
but it's
wins
all
and
the
losses,
time with
performance.
sports. Yeah,
it's every single day. No,
it's all the time.
I get that. It's just
an album's once a year, right? So of course you can.
Yeah, it just seems.
And I write critical columns too, but I always try to put it in that perspective of did somebody really choke? I mean, I don't know.
Yes.
I've always hated that.
Well, they do choke. Players do choke.
Sometimes they just miss
Yeah.
or make a mistake.
The other thing is, if you're going to fail 70% of the time and you don't get a
In
hit,
baseball, yeah.
I don't know if you choked. It's just that's the part of the 70% where you don't hit the ball.
Well, and all the math folks in baseball don't think there's such a thing as pressure in baseball anyway,
Well,
right?
they're allowed. I mean, yeah.
Because the numbers don't really.
Just like anybody else, an athlete's allowed to have an off day. It's just everyone's watching them when they do.
Yeah, and to mitigate that a little bit, when you demand $50 million a year and you screw up,
part
you
of the
kind
deal.
of have taken some of the sympathy out of it because when you
Yeah, people attach money to it for sure. When you say you suck, well, of course they don't suck. They're one of the best in the world at what they do. It's just that relative to the best in their sport.
Okay, that brings
they're
up
better
another.
than the guy with the mustard stain behind home plate, who's juggling a beer and a pretzel. They're better than him for sure. But when you set the bar high and you demand that kind of money, you invite a certain amount of scrutiny and criticism.
And most of that just, rolls off their back, which brings, you said you suck. That brings me up to
Well, some of it does. Izzo makes a big. No, I don't know that it does. You guys,
I'm thinking once again. I'm thinking once again professionally.
You watch Ted Lasso. I know this is fictional,
Yeah.
but there's some truth in this because I've heard this around covering sports. And there's a moment in there when one of the assistant coaches, Nate.
Nate, yeah.
Nate has a moment. He has a play. It works. He gets some publicity, and he's enjoying reading Twitter the next few days and all the kudos. Well, then all of a sudden he gets to, wow, he's probably it was harsh.
Yeah.
What a loser or something like that.
Yeah.
And you can see what it does. It makes him, and it made me think because Izzo and other coaches often talk about the players these days. They can see the criticism directly in their phones all the time, and
But wait a second.
developing a skin for that is not something that athletes had to do before. It's not
Sean,
it's not the same as getting booed.
Do you know how much? Well, I know, but isn't that part of the trade-off? There was a story about LeBron and I can't think of who the other two guys were, arguing with their fans at the game, right? Because they don't get it, which fine, whatever. Yeah, those players aren't the athletes, but they're paying. It's part of the deal you make. You're allowed to be critical of that team. And I
Yeah,
was
but
just
are you allowed
surprised
to be a prick?
But people get criticized at their jobs every single day.
Not in that way. They do not.
You want to look at my inbox? You want to look at my Twitter? You get bad messages.
Well, of course I do.
Yeah.
Of course I do.
Yeah, but you still have to perform to a certain level.
And I've had to get used to it. I mean, it's one thing. It's because the
Now I'll give college a break because for some reason they don't want to pay the kids and they're still quote unquote.
I'm not saying it's not part of the deal. I'm just saying they're still human beings.
Okay, I want to get
and it's harder on some people than it is on
I want
others.
to get your thoughts on the whole Naomi Osaka thing where someone yelled, "You suck" to her while she's playing. And she wanted to address the issue then and there and then pulled exactly the same stunt Serena Williams did to her after the match where the loser took control of the story and the microphone to address this whole situation.
Yeah, I saw that. What do you think of that, Mike? I'm curious.
So I feel sorry for anybody who's trying to win a spot or keep a job and they're struggling. You see these people with so much talent, way more talent than you'd ever have, and you think, well, this guy's not, or this woman's not performing up to expectation. Sit them on their ass, and I think it's really easy to ignore that they are probably living. Like I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do next, and I wake up unable to go back to sleep because I'm full of anxiety about what am I going to do? What am I going to do?
A lot of people that have that.
And I think about that, what I go through, and I think about if I was an athlete where I'm like, if I have a bad game, I get cut, I lose my scholarship. If I don't do whatever, I lose my job, I lose my career. And it really makes me identify and feel sympathy for those athletes. But when you get to a certain point, like with Naomi Osaka, there's a lot of people out there saying stuff, and I would think that one of the things that makes you a professional is being able to tune that out so you can focus on the ball I'm throwing up in the air so I can hit it at 100 miles an hour, the return that's coming, where I'm going to position myself on the court, and that if you're not able to filter that out, if you're not able to put yourself in that cocoon, you're probably not prepared to be in that match. You have to develop those calluses, and you have to. Now she took herself out before, saying that she couldn't take it, and she's put herself back in. Maybe this is a sign that she's not ready to compete again. But I think one of the things that makes a great athlete, that makes someone who can perform under pressure, is the ability to drown all that out. You know, when the Spartan fans are counting down and you really know there's 10 seconds left, not 5 seconds left, when you're at the free throw line and they're putting the big heads up and they're wiggling, you know, flyers and stuff like that. I think what makes the greatest athletes are the ones who can say, you know what, you guys don't matter. I'm here to do this, and I do this all the time, and I'm going to do it this time. And if I don't do it this time, I'm going to do it next time. And so I'm sympathetic to what she's going through, but to shut it down, I mean, frankly, out of respect for her opponent, she might just say, I got to get through this, and if this is going to cost me the match, let me just play through it and go and cry in the locker room.
But there's a lot of people that do the
I don't
job
like
every
people who
day.
sit at games and just yell, "You suck."
I was just going to say,
not.
Let's flip that around though for a second, because I think we're headed there a little bit.
At least not to the home team.
And
if you want to yell at the other guys,
no.
that's
But
all.
what drives a human being to yell out to another human being, "You suck"?
Well, maybe they didn't like the way she was playing.
No, right? I mean, but what thinks that? What makes you think in your soul
look at it this way.
that's okay to do? We do it because as a society, we've said, okay, that it's fair game in the sports. What I'm saying is that may change at some point.
It has everywhere. I
mean, I think it's going to keep changing.
What if Naomi Osaka?
People aren't going to feel free to say that.
What if Naomi Osaka
some point
worked at McDonald's and had to deal with a shitty customer
and said, "You suck"?
Yeah.
What would the manager do? Kick the fucking customer out?
Absolutely would not.
I've seen it happen.
Maybe, but I used to, when I was a paper boy, we used to sell
again in the 90s or the 80s.
You kick someone out for saying you suck.
Late
That's
70s.
pretty harsh.
But when you sold your
If I have an employee in my business, sorry, Mike, if I have an employee in my business and somebody comes in and is rude to one of my, of course they're out. They're gone.
But okay, fair enough. But what I'm saying, and this on a very small
Money isn't that
scale,
important.
We used to sell insurance along with newspaper subscription. It was only like 10 cents or 20 cents a week. And I had this abusive people on my route. They would get drunk and they would call up and they would say, "You didn't deliver our paper," which was not true because they were the most abusive people on my route. If somebody was going to get skipped a paper, it wasn't them. But for some reason, they'd get bombed and they'd want to call and harass an 11-year-old kid. So I cut them. And my manager said, "Are you ready to take them back? Because they do, they have the subscription and they also have the insurance, so we want to keep them as a subscriber." There are some,
and that's changing, is my point.
Some people
maybe, but there are some employers who say the customer is always right.
Of course, they're bad.
And the higher paying the customer is,
and I think
the
that's
more you
changing,
better.
don't you all?
I hope it is, but
instead of trying to change the asshole, right? Because they're not going to change. Why don't you learn how to adapt to the asshole when they
because you're doing that for the power of the dollar instead of. Right. And then you're empowering the asshole to always be an asshole. And I don't think that's right. And I think that's what society's trying to change a little bit.
Well, I think there's a line. I think just yelling, I think you suck, yelling that out doesn't mean you should be
if I'm in line,
thrown out of a game.
If I'm in line at McDonald's trying to get a delicious filet of fish, right, and I'm 4 or 5 back and it's taking forever and forever, and I look and I don't like the way the body language or whatever behind the counter, and I literally yell very sincerely and intently, "You suck," with contempt in my voice, and they want to kick me out, of course they should.
So
You shouldn't be able to stand in line at that point.
There's a difference here.
Depends what they're yelling. I don't think "you suck" is that big of a criticism.
If I'm driving down the street and somebody's cutting the grass on the median and they missed a spot and I start yelling, "You suck. I could cut the grass better than you. You're a piece of shit." That to me is a lot different than me paying $50 to go to a ball game and somebody comes up who's making $10 million.
That's because we've attached that value all these years. And what I'm saying is,
because the ball player has put himself in the public domain. The ball player has put himself in the middle of the arena for compensation, for glory, for personal satisfaction, and they are a performer. Whereas the guy cutting the grass or flipping the filet-o-fish or pulling it out of the fryer, they're just trying to make a buck.
We used to boo and cackle in playhouses and theaters too, and we do not anymore.
Oh, dude, the stuff we used to chatter when we played Little League that we'd call
No, I'm saying, you go to a theater and
that doesn't happen anymore.
In 1920, I mean, society used to have different rules for those spaces. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm saying we're changing.
Okay.
And that's where we're going.
But I'm saying a guy who says, "Hey, Miguel Cabrera, you're making $34 million. You suck." is not the same as a guy who says, "Hey, guy cutting the grass, you suck."
Sure.
I remember Pete Incavalier or whatever was at the plate. He was playing for the Red Sox and the Tigers.
Home run or strikeout.
Over at Tiger Stadium, and it rained, and we got to move down by Paul. Maybe I've told you all this before. Somebody yelled out, "Hey, Pete! I just met your mom in the parking lot," or whatever, and I understand it can be funny in a boyish kind of bathroom humor way, but I get it.
Hey, I'm all
yeah,
for
but part
empathy.
of being a professional is saying, my mom isn't here.
No, I
you gotta
totally
know what your mom
understand.
is.
What I'm saying, all I'm saying is
No
I
es
think
posible.
society's changing. I really do. And what Osaka did the other day, it's going to become less and less kosher to say, or cool to say you suck. It just is. That's where we're headed. You may not like it.
There's still going to be people saying it. There's still going to be assholes.
Yeah,
So
and they're going to be ushers removing. I've seen it more and more at NBA games
Take
in
care
particular.
of your mental health and learn how to adapt to it. Though.
But I've started to see why.
It just you can't control every single person, but you can control yourself.
No, but you can set norms in public spaces about how we want to interact. Whether you're paying to get there or not.
You suck. I don't know. Maybe it's because of the stuff.
I'm not saying that you suck. I'm just saying I've seen more and more fans get escorted out of games not because of you suck, but you are a piece of shit. That would get you booted if you said that courtside, right?
What happened to that guy who used to sit behind the Wizards bench and just go crazy?
Oh,
on
the rubber
visiting
chicken,
team all
Robin.
the time?
What was his name? Robin. Yeah, I know who.
Yeah, I don't remember.
He
but
sucks.
He was like the
Get him outta
super
here.
fan, and he would just hassle everybody, and I think the opposing teams just didn't take him serious. It's like, oh yeah, there's that jackass again. But
Hey Sean, how come you
is he
can
gone?
cheer all? This is just a total related but not really related question. How come you're allowed to cheer and yell whatever you want at most sporting events except for tennis and golf? It's always been so weird to me that you got to be quiet at certain times.
You can yell at certain times in both those sports.
That's
right?
stupid, isn't it? Wouldn't it be more exciting if you could?
No, I think I completely agree. I think the server, they do it during the serve, right, in tennis and during the shot in golf. How awesome would that be if you could make all the noise you want, miss it,
Yeah, like a free throw shooter,
or boo, or not boo, but just make noise, try to distraction.
It would be way. I mean, look at Happy
It'd be
Gilmore.
awesome.
It'd be way better.
It'd be totally awesome. And by the way, I'm all for you can't make a shot or you can't shoot, whatever. But to say when you go after somebody's character, that's when people are getting booted for that.
I don't think you suck.
But you suck.
I'm not saying that.
It's not like saying you're bad at math. I've got your SAT scores. And you're like, oh my God, they got.
Why
me.
would you yell that to her anyway? She clearly doesn't suck. I mean, just factually.
You suck.
Well, she wasn't playing very well, was she?
No, but she's arguably the best player in the world. I mean, right? She's not playing like that right now, but
she sucks.
She sucks. Yeah.
Yeah. I actually.
And I gotta believe there's some
when
players.
she's rolling, she's really fun to watch because she's
but
amazing.
She hasn't played in a long time.
I gotta believe there's some people who use that, like the water boy, as tackling fuel. Where it's it's like, oh yeah, I suck.
Oh, for sure. Especially if that's coming from
Once
a
again,
coach.
that's reacting to it as
Right?
opposed to
A
trying
coach.
to change the behavior of someone else.
You're not trying to change somebody's behavior. You're simply saying you can't do that in this establishment, in this public space. That's all it is. Or private space, I guess. It's because it's technically private, but there are also public rules that govern it. Anyway.
So I want to give Sean credit for being a reporter who still wants to be a social engineer.
I don't want to be a social engineer.
I'm trying to bring
I
it
don't
back
want to be a social engineer. I just don't want people coming in and being cocksuckers into my business.
But you wouldn't yell that at him.
Geeks have inherited the earth.
Did I do that?
What a dork.
Does him wanting to play with us again mean that he's turning into a geek, or we're turning into cool guys?
You've probably never heard of Delicia Martin before, but you should know that name because Martin is a superintendent for the Hinds County School District near Jackson, Mississippi, who showed their hindquarters recently, this month in fact, when they tried to essentially ban a book. Martin fired Toby Price, an elementary school assistant principal who read, "I Need a New Butt."
What?
It's the Sean Windsor memoir. It's a very personal story about a
new
man
butt?
and his butt. I need a new butt.
It's a whole series of them, yeah.
Yeah.
Why do I need one?
What?
I don't have one, I guess. Is that what you're saying?
I'm just saying it's
small.
could firm it up a little.
Small, flabby ass.
Maybe some Kegels or something. You know.
Oh God!
No, I guess that's not
He
good.
wants
for the
Anyway.
butt.
He once
Well,
told me
it's-
his butt was so firm he could play
it's a gateway
jacks off of
exercise.
it.
It starts with the Kegel, and you get back to the glutes. But
He did. He said
So-
that his butt was so firm he could play jacks off of it. He told me that one time.
it's true to this day. But I
Do you
don't
believe that, Mark?
I'm not
Yes, I
inviting.
can.
I'm not inviting
And
anybody.
I said, doesn't the earring get in the way?
There's a difference between having firm buttocks and being a tight ass. I just want to make that distinction.
Nobody's saying anything like
Having the appropriate sized office. Anyway, so this book tells the story of a boy who noticed his butt has a big crack in it. And so he's like, okay, something's wrong. It's broken. I need to get a new one. And he goes over these 32 pages on a silly and humorous journey to find the right butt. Well, the kids thought it was hilarious. They're second graders. Who wouldn't?
Yeah, I just read to Shar's second grade class and I crushed it.
With I
Had
need a new
great
butt?
No, you know what's funny though? After I saw the story, I'm like, oh man, I wish I would have read that to the class.
Yeah, so it's pretty harmless. It's about as close to fart jokes as you can get in a public school.
Sure.
Kids loved it, but Martin didn't like it. She wrote in Price's termination papers because, yes, my friends, Mr. Price, who has his own family, was fired. He or she said that Toby Price showed a lack of professionalism and impaired judgment because the topics described in the book were inappropriate. Now, Amazon is saying this book is for kids 6 to 10, grades 1 to 5, so it's pretty much right in the wheelhouse.
Has this guy
of second
has this
graders.
guy done anything else to get in trouble? Has he ever been written up?
Oh, that's the worst part. So he's the assistant principal, right? So he's
Yeah.
not teaching a class, but this was a Zoom lesson, I guess, with these second graders. The guest bailed out, so they said, hey, Toby,
So he
can you
stepped
fill
up.
in? So he jumps off the bench. He gets in the game. He pulls out a book. He's got little kids, so he knows what's appropriate for them. He reads this book. They love it. Within days, he is fired. So
Oh, that is horseshit.
yeah. So at a time when educators are under attack and books are being banned at an alarming rate, we're going to make Delicia Martin our Geek of the Week for drawing a new battle line, or a crack, if you will, in the culture wars.
There's an all-night party in room 7609. And you can dance together all night if you've got the time.
So last week we teased Todd's suggestion for our New Wave suite. He wanted us to book the King Bees, citing their strong musical ties to Detroit. He says frontman Jamie James was born 1953 in Toronto, Canada, but moved to Detroit 20 years later in 1973, where he played with an R&B group. After moving to Southern California, James formed King Bees, who Todd says helped energize rockabilly with a new wave flavor. So let's see what Todd with 1D is talking about with Man Made for Love from the King Bees. He says it's a tune that will straighten you out of that easy chair.